Thanks for being here for this discussion today. Thanks, Ben, for the great introduction. And Chuck, I want to thank you. It's not every day that a farmer gets to sit on a stage with the CEO of a company that we buy products from but has such a huge impact here in the state of Iowa. Obviously, we're tremendously proud to have World Food Prize hosted here in Iowa. And I know Corteva has a huge presence, rich history here in the state. For those who haven't ventured up to Johnston or seen your facilities, tell us a little bit about Corteva's presence here and what's important to you here.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. It's not every day I get to be questioned by my customers. So we promised we wouldn't talk about price today, so that's good. But I should start by thanking you as well. So fifth generation farming, obviously that's just a huge connection to what we do here, and so thank you for what you do. Look, Iowa is really one of our key homes as Corteva. We're in 140 plus countries, but right here in Iowa, we've got, our global seed business is actually run out of the state, and we do a significant amount of our seed R&D globally right here. We also have about 3,000 employees and their families that call the state home, and we're very proud of every one of them. So if you think about Corteva's history, right, we go all the way back to Henry Wallace, Vice President of the United States under Franklin Roosevelt, as we all know, a really successful Iowa farmer and really the founder of Pioneer Seed, which of course now is part of Corteva. So we're just so delighted to have that history, the richness here. And we're so thankful what's been developed in the state. Today, when I look at this, just what's happened, I was here a couple of years ago. The crowd is much bigger now, which is fantastic. Norman Borlaug, the work that he's done, we're all trying to continue in his footsteps. I think we owe all of these fine people just so much gratitude, and I'm just delighted to be here today.
Mm-hmm. So many important discussions happening here at this event, Chuck, and important discussions about food security and the progress that's been made on food quality, quantity, access to food. We know there's been a lot of progress, but still some challenges. What stands in our way of achieving food security globally?
Yeah, look, when you start talking about food security, it's such a big, complicated question and challenge for us. Oftentimes the industry likes to focus on what's happening in developing countries, which is real, right? A lot of the developing countries still do not have the production, the transportation, the logistics, the markets. Yields are too low, waste is still too high. But it goes well beyond that. When I start thinking about food security, there's a lot of tension right now around the regulatory system, for example. Oftentimes the regulatory system to try to get our products approved, it's highly fragmented, very, very political, and not as science-based as we would like. It's already been mentioned today, but it's worth mentioning again, geopolitics. So the example everybody's using is the war in Ukraine right now, disruptions of grain going to the most necessary and needed countries in Africa and the Middle East, and of course the fertilizer trade, which even American farmers saw that tightness over the last couple of years. Beyond that, though, when we look at sort of the data from a Corteva perspective, what we're finding is that there are some worrying trends globally around food security, and it really has to do with, and I am no expert in climate change by far, but we are starting to see insect and disease pressure migrate to parts of the world that we haven't seen before. And let me just give you a couple of examples. So in East Africa and South Asia, just a couple of years ago, there was locust swarms that were approximately 100 square miles. In Kenya, one was reported to be 25 miles by 37 miles wide. Now locusts, they're normal for that part of the world, but not that size. And a lot of experts are starting to understand that the reason that the size of the locusts, the swarms are getting so large is because of the extreme moisture followed by extreme heat. That's one example. You say, okay, that's Africa and Asia. If you go to Europe, you look at olive production. We all use olive oil, and what you can see right now is that there's a bacteria that is destroying millions of acres of the olive crop, driving up food pricing, of course, but also really stressing, I think, the food system. And then just here in the United States, you start thinking about going to Florida, and you see the citrus producers. Again, another fungus that is attacking the crop, led by insect disease. And that the forecast for the crop this year will be one of the worst since 1930. And then here in Iowa, you've got a summer that was quite warm, quite dry, high winds. I think they call them derechos now. There's a new word I've learned.
Unfortunately, we know what a derecho is now.
Everybody knows what a derecho is now. Who knew what that was 2 or 3 years ago? And then not to mention the insect pressure in terms of nematodes and corn rootworm. But Julie, you're the expert here. What I'd say is when we add all this up, the FAO has sort of put a price tag of insect and disease at 70 billion, or about 40% of global production. So if you can imagine even getting half of that solved, what it could do to food security. But I'd be curious on your take in terms of Iowa.
Yeah, good question. You raised very, very important issues. I mean, obviously pest and disease pressure is, and weather challenges and climate change and all of those things. We are fortunate to just wrapped up harvest on our farm, which is always a good feeling every year. I think our favorite day is when we harvest Grandma's farm, which this was the 144th consecutive year that we've harvested that farm. And I think it's so special to us because we think about all the improvements that have been made over those years. And the productivity improvements that we've made because of innovation and technology and ability to withstand some of those challenges that you mentioned, but also, we take our role in food production really seriously and caring for the land and the water and the air around us. And so we're going to continue to rely on companies like Corteva, the brilliant scientists in this room, to bring us solutions to overcome some of those challenges. So maybe to expand upon that, Chuck, what do you see as the key to solving those challenges that you framed so well?
Yeah, look, I think when we start thinking about the opportunity, I know there's a lot of challenges here, but I'm not really that worried. In fact, I'm probably more excited about the future of ag and the opportunities we've got to make a dent in food security than I have been in some time. And that's because I think we do understand this, at least the folks in this room that are close to the industry understand that really part of the solution is going to need to be new technology. We're going to have to bring new products and new solutions to these challenges. But our track record, if you think about it as an industry, is unbelievably so positive, right? This year, if you think about US farmers, most likely will produce about 500 million tons of food, making US farmers the most productive farmers on the planet by far. That's about a 300% increase over 70 years. And it is a story that needs to be told proudly. And I wish more people would tell that story. When I think about Corteva, what we're trying to do in our small way is we invest about $1.5 billion a year, so about $4 million a day in new technology. And that's where I get excited because I have unique insights into that pipeline and what's coming to the market. And I'm certain that we'll be able to address and stay ahead of what we need to. Some of the more interesting things for Corteva is gene editing technology. When I look at that, I call it precision breeding. I never see a lot of scientists overly excited, and when I talk about gene editing in our shop, it is so incredible on what can be done with that technology. We believe that gene editing has the potential to be more impactful than biotech was 25 years ago. And then when you start thinking about crop protection, we've got a great pipeline that will address some of these issues I just talked about today. And we've got about 9 new products coming to the market over the next 8 to 10 years. And all of them are meeting a new level of environmental performance. So they're not even going to solve the problems in terms of addressing what they need to, but the impact to the environment is going to be much less. So I'm an optimist, and I think we'll be able to rise to the challenge, just like this industry has done for decades. Mm-hmm.
I love the technology and innovation, investment and research. I want it on our farm. What are some of the barriers that you see coming, that you're facing today or see coming down the pike that maybe would prevent some of those technologies from reaching our farm?
Yeah, great question. Look, I think that innovation is an important part of this story and this journey. It has been and it will be. But we need to get the products into your family farm, into all family farms we can. And in order to do that, we really need a regulatory framework. So if you think about what we do as a company, right, To bring in a new seed hybrid, it takes 7 years today. To bring in a new crop protection product, it takes 13 years. And to bring in the next level of biotech technology will be about 16 years. So if you've got a problem on your farm, that's a long time to wait. And so we don't want to cut corners. We need to make sure that our products are safe and that they're having the impact that we want them to have and no more than that. But there has to be a way to accelerate this because I think it's necessary and it's needed. I call it smart regulation. And what I mean by smart regulation, just to be very blunt, is we need to go back to where this industry started, which is using data and science. The decisions that regulatory bodies need to make need to be based on good science. And then when I look around the world, what I'm finding is that there's a pretty significant fragmentation now from the regulatory bodies. So it takes us years to move these products around the world to other farmers. And if there was a way to share information, share data, streamline things, it would be lower costs for everyone, and it would accelerate getting these necessary technologies in the hands of farmers around the world. So that's what I think is needed.
Seems like a common sense approach to, maybe as farmers we think about things in those terms, but a common sense approach, science-based approach makes sense. How do we bring that to fruition? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, look, I guess what I'd say is this is one of these wonderful events where the industry is talking to itself, which I think is important. And we understand that there's these great opportunities, right? And that technology is going to be necessary and needed. And as I mentioned, the track record has been really exceptional in terms of driving new technology, productivity, sustainability, and really getting the next level of performance in the industry. But I think there are people now that are so many generations removed from the farm that they don't understand it, and it's a bit of a scary world for them. And when you start talking about technology that we need to solve these challenges, they can be considered to be threatening and maybe a little alarming. And so I think what's needed, to be candid with you, is we have to figure out a way to bring our farms, and in Corteva's position, our science, our data, our labs, our people, and tell that story the way we want to tell it so that we can see and get social acceptance. I do think that the technology will be there. This will not be a technology challenge. It's going to always be difficult, but I think we understand what we need to do. I do think that the regulatory system needs to enable that. And then the biggest challenge that I see right now is when I talk to people, and I'm sure you do the same thing, that people that are removed from farming and from agriculture, I always hear, well, farming hasn't changed in 50 years. Or you're always slow to adapt new products or new technology. And that organic farming is important, but all farmland can be organic. And so when you start thinking about these comments, what it leads me to believe is that we still have some work to do as an industry and as a value chain. And we really have to think about how do we become more transparent, how do we share what we're doing, and so that people understand that what we're doing is really focused on productivity, on environmental responsibility, but the needs that we have with 10 billion people going to be on this planet by 2050, and people wanting and needing to eat healthy, nutritious, and sustainable food, we need access to these tools. In fact, we won't be able to do it without the technology. And I think that is a story that we need to reinforce, and we have to find a way to make sure that we're communicating that broadly.
I love your comments about social acceptance. It seems like whenever we host groups on our farm, they're very open to hearing about it, but until you open your doors and show them what's happening, answer their questions, and they're transparent, they don't know what to believe. They don't even know what questions to ask, and I'm sure the same thing is true when they're thinking about research and science and technology, and oftentimes when you can connect them to the people behind it, it makes a big difference. I want to thank you, Chuck, for being open to this conversation, for Corteva's leadership in carrying some of these key issues forward, because certainly they're there's significant challenges and require everybody in this room and companies with prominence like Corteva to help carry them forward. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, and we're just delighted to be part of the World Food Prize. We think it's a phenomenal effort right here in Iowa, which is incredible. I know there's delegations from all over the world, and in our small way, we're just so happy to be part of it. So thank you, Julie.
Yes, very much. And for anybody visiting to Iowa, come visit a farm, see harvest happening. You'll get to see why we think this is a really special place for agriculture. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.